Hey, it's TC Josie coming to you with another OTC setup video. Let's talk smart blocks. This has been a hot subject and it's so hard to really piece together what exactly happens. I've already created a video on the beginner's guide to really understanding it. And now let's go step by step to really making that ours, putting it in our system and getting things going with smart blocks. Let's dive in.
Okay, so we'll be looking at converting my intro to the cooperating agent when we're representing the buyer side. So it is basically going to go over a few different ways to use smart blocks. We're going to have it look at one of our fields and say, if it's blank, do this, and if it's not blank, do that. And then we're also going to look at some yes, no's. Is the inspection period waived? Yes. Show this. If it's no, show that instead. And then we're also going to be looking at inline smart blocks and kind of how that works in the back end. So to get started, you'll want to have 3 tabs open. You'll want to have your email template, of course, showing here. You'll want to have a tab with the field editor open, and that's just going to the hammer icon and field editor. And then you'll want to have your smart blocks open as well, and that's the hammer icon, smart blocks, or control, or I think it's command S is the shortcut to have that open. So the first thing I like to do is go ahead and have my screen split in 2. So I'm going to bring my smart blocks over to the right-hand side. I'm going to create its own little window here and hit the Windows button, hold that down and the right key, and it's going to shoot it off to the right. And then it's going to ask me, what do I want on my left? I am going to have the email template and the field editor on my left-hand side. So the way that I like to start these is reading from top to bottom and determining whether that should be there always or if that should only come in if something was either filled out or if a condition was met. So for the intro part here, congrats, you're under contract. That always happens. My name is always Josie, and I'm the transaction coordinator for the buyer's agent. Moving forward, they'll continue to handle negotiations and amendments. That always happens. This also always happens. This here will only happen if the home inspection is actually scheduled. So how do I convert this to a smart block so that it only comes in if home inspection date exists, if we have a home inspection date in place? So the first step is going to be going to your smart blocks and adding a smart block. I would suggest you create a naming convention for yours, because if you've got 100, 200 smart blocks going on, it's going to be hard to keep track of those. They did recently add categories, so that would help you filter those out. But I would suggest creating a good naming convention so that you always know exactly what's going on. As you can see here, I like to do B-intro to title or B-intro verbiage. So I definitely get specific. For this one, I'm going to do B-intro to co-op, and it's right here, home inspection scheduled. Select all, copy, paste. Always just copy and paste that name to the merge field so that it's easy for you to understand when you're seeing that in the actual email template itself. So now we're going to put our verbiage here. I'm just going to go ahead and select all here. I'm going to cut it, remove it completely from my email template because I don't want that to show unless this is met. So now that we've got what we want here, I also want you to notice that I have a space here that's separating the next line. We'll want to put that space here in the smart block, but smart blocks don't see spaces. You need to put a code that says I need a break or a new line should this be true. So I'm going to go into my merge fields and then utilities and click on this new line, the HTML break tag. I'm going to paste that right here. And another very important step is any of these custom, like these system the system codes, they cannot have any formatting to them. So you see how it's bold highlighted because it was a continuation of this. I'm just going to select all of that there and hit this TX. That's going to remove any special formatting, and that's extremely important when we're doing this. So once we're done with the body here, we're going to add a condition, and the condition is going to be if this date is not blank, bring this in. If it is blank, I don't want to tell them, you know, hey, this is when it's scheduled for. So I'm going to go ahead and add that condition. If the property field home inspection date is not blank, and you can ignore this completely, this if applicable, so we can ignore that. Once you hit add, we can see right here that it's added this condition. If this is not blank, bring this in. So the final step here is to add this merge field. Now we have a smart block merge field that we need to add to the email template so that if it does apply, it will bring it in. So we'll go to our merge fields, smart blocks, look for that new one, buyer intro to co-op, home inspection scheduled. Go ahead and copy. And then I'm going to place it where I would like that to start if it does apply. Now that brings us to another thing, because you see I've added this break here and I only want this break there if it applies. That means if I just leave it the way that you're looking at it right now, it's going to bring in this verbiage. It's going to bring an extra line, and then it's going to have this space, and then it's going to go into the rest of this email. So we will want to bring this up all the way to the top here to meet right at the end of that merge field, because if it doesn't apply, I don't want those extra spaces to show up. So I'm going to back this right up here. If it doesn't apply, it's just going to continue with the transaction info. And if it does apply, it's going to bring in this verbiage, a space, and then continue on with the transaction info. So that's our first smart block. We've got the home inspection scheduled smart block. Now I'd like to look at the timeline here. There are a few things that may or may not apply. So this one, I'm going to use the example for the inspection contingency. So the inspection contingency could be waived, and in that case, I want it to say inspection contingency waived. But if it's not waived, I want to show the date that the inspection contingency ends. So we'll go back to our smart blocks, and I'm going to add a new one. Right now, we'll focus on the first one here, the inspection contingency not being waived. So I'll add the smart block, B, intro to co-op. And this one is actually, so since it's a timeline, I'm going to name this one timeline because this timeline goes into the buyer's intro, the seller's intro, the intro to title, to the lender. So this goes in all of them. So I'm going to change my naming convention for my timeline smart blocks to be timeline. You could even just do timeline because we always do the buyer side and the seller side. So I'm just going to call it timeline inspection contingency. Oops. Inspection contingency and I'm just going to say not waved. Select all, copy, paste. I'll add that here. And just like before, I'm going to select all of this here, cut it completely, remove it from there, and paste it here. Now, with this one is my yes, no. So now if you don't have yes, no's built into your system already, that's when you'll want to go over to your field editor and add a choice field called waived inspection contingency, yes, no. So it looks like I don't have one here. So now we'll just go over to the add field button. It's going to bring us to the top there. We'll want to, you can make the window big so that it shows up on the right hand side there, or just scroll all the way to the bottom. And I'll call this waived inspection period. Make it the same as the merge field, the same as the title. And this is going to be a choice field. I'm going to add the field so that I can start adding my options. And the options are no and yes. Now, a bonus step to make your life easier when it comes to the intake form is to change this intake form display radio option to yes. We want it to be radio buttons so that it's not 2 clicks, 1 click to select, 2 clicks to select the option. We want it to be buttons that we can say either yes or no. So now that I've changed that, I'm going to hit I understand and update, and let's shoot this window back up to the left-hand side so that I can continue on what I was doing. So now that I have that yes, no option there, I can add this condition that says if inspection period is not waived, bring this in. Add condition, so we've just added this new property field. And then I'm just going to search inspection. Yep, waived inspection period is equal to, is equal to no. So if the waived inspection period question on the intake form is no, then bring this in. And that final step, putting that merge field, the SmartBlocks merge field, where it belongs in the email template. So I'll go back to my merge fields, search for this new smart block. I named it timeline, and it was this timeline one. And I'm just going to add that merge field in where it belongs. So now we'll add the inspection contingency waived one. So this is going to be much like this one where we could even clone this, but instead of having it titled not waived, I'm just going to copy all of this here. We're going to name it waived. So everything's the same besides this here. So we're going to cut this, and then also we need to do the opposite here. Either waived inspection period is not equal to no, or waived inspection period is equal to yes. Either way will work. So I'm going to delete this one here, add a new condition, and say if the property field waived inspection period is equal to yes, that's when this will come in. Again, we'll add that merge field to our email template. SmartBlocks. This is going to be timeline waived. And then add that merge field here. So now this one's a little bit special because we, with SmartBlocks, it's assuming it's going to be its own line. So just like we, so let me think here. When we added that break to this one, we were adding an additional space because it was going to take up its own space anyways. So adding that break made it so it added a full space between that and whatever happened after. So with this here, this is just creating its own line. So now we can create a smart block for this here to come in only when our yes/no question is equal to yes on or before, and we're going to make it an inline. So I'll add the smart block. Actually we called this timeline on or before, closing. So now for this one, it's a little bit special because we don't want an extra space there. So we wouldn't want to put the merge field here. I'm just going to cut this and delete that extra space. So that's how it should look if the closing can't happen on or before. But if it can, we want it to say on or before space closing date. So you'll want to add the space here. Otherwise, it'll be right up. If we added that merge field right here, it would just say on or before closing date with no space in between. So we're going to add the space at the end of this, and that way it'll work here. Now, this is another reason we might want to jump back into our fields to add this yes/no. Can it happen on or before? Otherwise, it has to happen on or after, right? So let me see if I have this. I'm going to put it in my, nope, I don't have it here. So I'm going to put it in my transaction details. I'm going to add a field, and then let's make this big again. And this is, can we close before close of escrow? This is going to be a choice field, and it's going to be our yes/no options. I'm going to change that to a radio option, and I'm going to update. Shoot this back over to my left. Let's go back to the email template, and now we can add that condition now that we have that field. Is equal to yes. Okay, so we're not going to add a break. We're not going to add anything fancy here, but the final step for these inline texts, the text that we want to show up in the same line that we put that smart block merge field, we're going to want to go back to our smart blocks. We'll go to that smart block here, and we're going to toggle this here, the inline smart block. We're going to toggle that on. That means it's going to keep it in its respective line there without adding an additional space. So we'll go ahead and, as usual, put the smart block merge field in the email template. And there you go. Now it's going to show up. If that equals yes, it's going to say on or before space closing date. So a bonus here and an important step when we have multiple lines like this in a multiple smart blocks like this in a timeline view like this, like a list view, we'll want to create a smart block group. So it's exactly the same as smart blocks, just a few different things. So now that we have all of our timeline smart blocks in place, we're going to edit smart groups, and we'll add a new one. Call it timeline. So we're going to now take this entire timeline and paste it here. And we're not going to add any conditions here because there's always a mutual acceptance date. There's always a purchase price. There's always an earnest money amount and holder. So we want this to always come in. We just want it to clean up if the inspection contingency is not waived or waived. We just want it to be cleaned up should these not apply. So we will leave this as the no conditions, and then come here and add this merge field for the smart block group. Called this one timeline. I'm going to back it up right to here. And another important piece here is to, actually, this should be good because it's always going to apply. So we don't need to add that break because it's always going to be there. So this, we can have this spacing here in the email template. So now we are done with our intro to co-op. We've got our title company info, lender info, we're good to go. Let's go ahead and test this out. I will go ahead and add a new tab here. We'll actually make this big. Let's just go into, we'll go into this one. So now we're going to be looking at our fields here. A few fields that we did do is that waived yes, no for the inspection contingency, inspection period. So we want to make sure, since we just added that, it's not going to be in our already existing transaction. So we'll need to go to manage fields, and we're going to add the close on or before escrow. Close of escrow, and then we're going to go down to our waived inspection period. That was a new field that we added. And now when we come back here, it's going to refresh our fields to include those in our view. So can we close on or before close of escrow? I'm going to say yes to this one so that we can see how that looks. And then I'm going to say the inspection period is waived, just so that we can see how that looks. I'm also going to add the home inspection. Oh, it's already added there, so we'll just leave that there to see that come in. And the testing part is the most important part because smart blocks, they have very weird formatting type things. Everything could look good at face value there when you're looking at your email template, your smart blocks, but there could be some weird formatting issue that is invisible to our eyes, but there's something in that code that isn't working. So the testing part is the most important part here. So it's this YouTube one. Going to apply this and let's check it out. So this came in beautifully. It has that space. The timeline came in beautifully. Oh, and we've got some issues here. So let's look at either, oh, actually the smart block's right there. So I'm going to, it's the smart block itself or the smart block group. So what I'm just going to do, because this can be here, just first things first, remove the formatting. We're going to play around with this, and playing around is also a pretty important piece. It looks like this has some weird, let me see if I can do this. If that doesn't work, yeah, weird. It's weird sometimes, trial and error. Definitely advise you play around and get used to kind of a flow of things. I'm going to make this black. I don't know why it wasn't. And it's a lot smaller. It's a little weird that it's showing up like this. Let me just do this entire line. There you go. That might have been the issue. You see how things can get a little weird sometimes. So I'm going to rebold that. Formatting isn't a problem. It's just a problem when it's connected to something like this. So let's see if this fixed it. otherwise, and that on or before came in beautifully as well. So that was the only weird thing that happened. And I wonder, oh yeah, I missed the inline step. So you see how it created its own line and then it added a space. I guess that's another important piece that I probably should have reviewed. We'll want to make the timeline smart blocks inlines as well, because we're putting it in the same line. So you could do this two ways. You could make them in line and have your smart block group show them in that line, or you can back this up. It doesn't look like there's an enter. It looks right, but in reality, there is no space between these, so it's literally back to back. If you did it this way, it would create a new line should this apply, create a new line should this apply, and this is going to be backed right up, just like we've been doing with the email template. But since we created them in line, I think we'll be able to do this. Let's play around. I haven't done this in a while, so let's see how it works. Back to testing. Beautiful. So now it came in exactly the way that I wanted it to. So I did that inline. So that wraps up kind of what you can do here. You can do smart blocks many different ways though, because in the conditions, I won't use anything real. The conditions here, you could do it based off of a field, and you saw that we could have the field here. So for a regular, so the contract title is just a text field. Let's do the status. We can do blank, not blank, equal to, not equal to, is greater than a number, is less than a number, is greater than this date, less than this date. I'm sorry, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, greater than, less than. So you could do it that way. You could also do file roles, whether the file role, let's say seller's property disclosure, exists or is missing. So you could have a smart block that says, please send us the seller's property disclosure if the seller's property disclosure is missing, or I've attached the seller's property disclosure if the seller's property disclosure exists in the property. Another one is contact role. You could say if lender is missing in property, say, please send me the contact information for the lender. But if it exists in the property, say, here's the lender's contact information. So there are many ways that you can use the smart block and really build out your email templates to get very specific. It really allows us to have personalized feeling emails go out, instead of you saying something like, if applicable, please reach out to this home inspector to get it scheduled. If the inspection's waived, we don't need to have that verbiage in there. So now we're able to really bring value to our agents by putting in the information that the client needs to see. You don't want them getting too much information, getting confused, reaching out to the agent or to you, asking questions. Do I need to do this? I know it says if applicable. Do I need to? You're going to say, oh no, it's waived, so you're good. So it allows you to give accurate information right on the spot instead of having to re-explain yourself or do like, oh, this might happen, if applicable this. You're getting very personal. So I'll leave you with that. Best of luck with building out your smart blocks.
Thanks for joining me. If you find any value in my content, be sure to like and subscribe. It'll get in front of more people and you'll get notifications when I post more videos. If you need any help with software, systems, tools, feel free to go onto my website, www.ticoptimize.com, and I am happy to help any way that I can. I'll see you next time.